If you went to public school like I did, you learned that we were created by chance, and we are nothing more than atoms.
Well, I don't know what public school you went to, but I don't remember that being the exact takeaway from mine. And if it really was with yours, well, they are wrong. For starters, chance is incredibly inaccurate. Natural selection, planet formation, the Big Bang, none of these things are described as chance events. They are, in fact, processes and systems, things that end up producing things in ways that are extremely predictable. And second, even if God do the real, we would still absolutely ultimately be made out of friggin' atoms. That's just a true thing about pretty much all the things in the universe. You think you would know that if you're actually an engineer as you do claim to be. Well, I suppose he could be that, but just, not a very good one.
But our teachers are never willing to admit the obvious conclusion.
That you're an idiot and are going to have to not only be held back a year, but ideally sent back to the first grade as it existed in 1802. Because their standards were way goddamn lower. But as you say, they didn't take those necessary steps, like sending you back in time, and now you're out here with the rest of us saying stupid things, and no one's stopping you. Horrific.
If what they taught was right, then we have no purpose.
What are you talking about? That's some real non sequitur shit right there. Even if it turns out that humans existed because of chance and that they are just atoms, that does not discount either some universal purpose that they have and also says absolutely nothing about personal purpose. And even if those things are true, you could still have a god boy who wants you to do specific things with your life, unless for some reason you believe that God can't give purpose to things after the fact. The same way that a child born to unprepared parents, they would still wish things for that child and try to help them achieve what they thought was best for them. I'm sure even your parents wanted you to grow up to be a competent and intelligent person. It's just sometimes we don't get what we want.
Just like a chair randomly stuck to the wall.
Well, that's a very, very cute visual gag you did there. I could be wrong. Some kind of editing trickery going on. I like it. But that's a really, really bad analogy for just so many reasons. First off, why did you stick it to the wall? You might claim for no reason, but you had to choose the chair. You had to make it an object that, at least to you, would have no reason to be on a wall. Essentially, I'm saying that that chair on that wall absolutely has a purpose, to be an example. But just like I am an example to people everywhere, a bad example is still an example. And yours is so bad that I could also think of a handful of other reasons for that chair to be there. The most obvious of which is a prank. People stick furniture to walls and ceilings to mess with people all the time. It's a bona fide classic. And then there's this old advert I remember, presumably showing it if I can find it, where it's essentially showing off how powerful the adhesive the company is selling is. And of course there's the old thing not where you expect it art installation type deal that drives people absolutely crazy. That's not art because it's stupid, etc. Which perhaps, but at least you're talking about it. Also, if you don't know what the chair was for in the first place, then maybe your visual could actually work, but it relies on having a previous understanding of what a chair is in order for you to subvert that expectation. It just fails on so many levels. I'm almost impressed.
Instead of admitting the obvious conclusion, our teachers came up with a simple lie.
Damn it, you're going to make me joke about your terrible understanding again, aren't you? Ugh. Something about just leave him be, he's not hurting anyone, but of course bringing down the overall IQ of an entire species. Could be considered pretty damn harmful if you ask me. But seriously, there really is no obvious conclusion to that. Only various possibilities. I'm starting to think that your teachers were right to pity you.
The purpose of life is to be happy. Do what you want. Follow your dreams. So if you want to be a chair stuck to the wall, go for it.
What namby-pamby, wishy-washy bullshit school did you actually go to? The amount of schools that tell you exclusively to be realistic about what you do is practically 100%. And just to preface, I don't think this is how it should be, but simply following your dreams isn't going to get you anywhere in life. Not as it is. And only really a select few absolute gigabrains could even have the chance to write their own ticket, so to speak. And even those people aren't told that they can do whatever they want. They're usually told that they should do something very specific, and usually high-end, like doctor or lawyer or whatever. Basically, no one gets told that they can do whatever it is they want in the vast majority of schools. In fact, in my experience, the only type of school that does that are the ones that ends up producing worthless nitwits with completely unjustified levels of confidence and, oh, I see what happened here.
And so now each generation is feeling more and more lost.
You want to back that up with like frickin' anything other than that's how you feel about it? Thing is, in any given decade, the overall life satisfaction of any given individual goes up and down as a function of countless variables in their life. The socio-economic climate and where exactly they currently exist on the planet. But the overall quality of life for a pretty significant segment of the population generally goes up. And while yes, that is not true for all of them at every single moment, the idea that things are somehow significantly worse than, say, 100 plus years ago is utterly ludicrous. I think the main difference nowadays is a lot more people are aware it is socially acceptable to understand that mental health is, to say the least, complicated and not a sign of poor character / moral failing. And don't get me wrong, shit could be a lot better, but I don't think pretending that Infinity Man really wants you to blow him is gonna help.
If you chase happiness, life will never be fulfilling or meaningful. It will be empty and lonely.
That is, without a doubt, the most insane thing I think I've ever heard a theist say. And I've heard them say a lot of shit. Trying to seek happiness, which, by the way, comes in so many forms, it's hard to know where to start counting. But doing that, trying to be happy, is somehow going to result in the absolute opposite of that. Which, by the way, also suggests that if you do the God thing, as he definitely wants you to do, that would make you utterly and completely bloody miserable. Amazing. I mean, you guys are usually pretty bad at the hard sell, coming in with bullshit like do as I say or burn forever. But do as I say, you'll absolutely hate it is a new one on me, not gonna lie.
And when things go wrong, you won't know why.
Oh my non-existo, further implications that are not good for you. Yeah, when things go wrong, there's usually little to no reason for it. I mean, sure, yeah, explanations can be figured out to understand exactly what went wrong, but it's not usually because, someone decided that. But again, the implication you're making here is that things go wrong in your life because God decided to screw with you. I mean, I know that's technically always the case with an all-powerful God, but to just come right out and say it by accident is something, all right.
So let's see what a chair can teach us about purpose.
Oh, I am sure that it could teach you many things. Like, say, how a mindless object that literally sits around all day can actually be useful. And at the very least, you could try to be more like it in the intellectual department. I mean, if this guy was as smart as a children's chair, he would be unstoppable.
So that we can figure out why you were created.
Even if we entertain the premise that there is a purpose to be found out, the idea that you're going to get to it with a relatively large piece of shaped plastic seems just a touch outlandish if I'm being charitable, and outright feckin' stupid if I'm giving the most amount of fairness that it actually deserves. But hey, I have been wrong that one time where I said I was wrong, but it turned out I was actually right. Heady times.
This is not a chair. This is a bench. But you already knew that.
I don't know, man. Assuming that the audience that you are catering to likely thinks that you are not an idiot, I wouldn't put anything past them. They might think it's some kind of spaceship or perhaps a donut shop. Also, yeah, it might not be a chair, but functionally, they are both absolutely seats, presuming you are trying to set up some kind of false dichotomy or something. I mean, if you're going to say that we know it's a bench because of where it is and it can seat multiple people, then a love seat in the park is also a bench. But of course, it isn't. No, that's what we call a midnight banging spot. Don't ask me how I know that.
How do you know? And how do you know that if you and your girlfriend were walking along this path, this would be the perfect spot to sit and talk and enjoy the scenery?
Well, I wouldn't know that because it's a bench. There is a lot more going on in that image than simply bench means two-person seat with a nice view. Like where I live, most of the benches give idyllic, picturesque views of busy intersections. And you know what? Some people like that. To some, that is a nice view. To others, nature is super frigging boring and would drive them crazy. And hell, I'm sure there's probably even someone out there that would get something out of sitting and watching a great big garbage dump for hours and hours at a time. I mean, again, you have subscribers, don't you? People are just weird like that. But not one of these locations has anything to do with what makes a bench a bench.
What if you saw this? Or this? You would be confused.
Actually, no. Again, because where I live, not being the best place on earth, I mean, most of it is fine most of the time, but I would in fact be completely unsurprised that the bloody chavs had been at it again. Yeeting benches into trees and rivers is actually just a sad inevitability of allowing stupid people to stay stupid, so in their minds destroying public property is just a fun time with the boys and not a demonstration of their shitty, entitled attitude towards the world.
The reason is that good design communicates purpose.
That's not strictly true. Intuitive design does that, but there's plenty of incredibly well-designed things that if you handed it to a random person, assuming that they had never seen it before without context, they wouldn't have a clue how it works. An absolute classic of brilliant design that has stood the test of time is the tin can. You hand a caveman one of those, what exactly do you expect them to do with it? They are almost impossible to open without the correct tools, and in no way communicate that they are even containing food without at least a basic label on them too. And even then, you wouldn't be surprised if they assumed it was a weird art cylinder. And on the note of correct tools, if you placed the can and an opener and several other random items in front of them, never in a million years are they going to intuit that one opens the other without a ton of experimentation. But both things are some of the most widely used objects in all of human history. The absolute nonsense you spew, man.
You do not need a sign that says, "Bench, please sit."
Yeah, but you also don't need a bench to think, you know what, this is a good place to take a break. A big rock, a piece of wall, a fallen tree, anything at the right height and placement is a perfectly usable seat. But you know why we know that a bench is specifically for that? Because we've seen benches before. You've used them. You've seen others use them. You've been directed to use them by your parents. You live in a world where benches are ubiquitous. If you had never seen or even heard of the concept of public seating before, you would wonder what the hell this weird structure even is. Now, you may get the bright idea to sit on it, but that doesn't mean that just like the wall, the tree, or the rock, that would be what you would intuit it is for.
Now, if we shorten this bench, at some point it becomes a chair. Why?
Because of definitions, dumbass. And if you took the back off of it, it would then be a stool. And if it had no legs, it would be a plank. The real question you want to ask is, when does it become a chair? Because the answer is, it doesn't. It's just an arbitrary distinction that will be different for almost every person you ask. Because while there's a broad definition of chair and of bench, there isn't an absolute standard by which we judge things as such. The wonderful and quite annoying thing about language is so much of it is just kind of vibes based. That's why questions like, is a hot dog a sandwich, are so much fun. Because no matter what some people will tell you, quite fervently, there really is no correct answer to anyone but yourself. And while you're down there now arguing about it in the comments, why don't you subscribe and like the video? If you do that, that means that I think you're correct. Cheers.
The purpose of a bench is to hold multiple people, and the purpose of a chair is to hold one person. Good design communicates potential.
Okay then, how many people is this pet chair supposed to seat? I'm guessing freaking none. And how about a chaise lounge, aka a long chair? You could easily fit 2 or 3 people on that, but it's a chair, so I guess that's not allowed. That's the thing that you seem to have completely missed. Whatever you call them doesn't really matter in the long run. It's how you use them. Both the words and the physical object. The names are just simple ways to communicate with each other, a simple concept of what something can maybe do, not necessarily a strict and unchanging fact about that object.
This bench has the potential of holding multiple people. This chair has the potential of holding one person.
The chair version literally has the potential to hold more than one person. You could sit back to back on it. You could stand on it. You could do the reverse cowgirl on it. You make it sound like if you even try the wrong thing on them, that it simply won't work. Perhaps you might even cause a glitch in the matrix and rocket off into the sky. Unfortunately, life just isn't that awesomely chaotic. If a human can get something to do something that it's not meant to do, chances are they can and more than likely will do that at least eventually, regardless of what your narrow-minded ass calls its quote-unquote potential.
And the purpose of this chair, the potential that it has, is for one of my little kids to sit in it.
And I would use it as a footstool, or a little table, or to hold a door open, or as a step to reach a high shelf, or as an improvised weapon against an intruder, or as a goddamn hat. All of those, especially the last one, right off the top of my head, without even thinking about it. So the idea that humans have one specific, immutable purpose, especially based on what you have said in this video, is just completely ludicrous. That it is no surprise it's something that you think, because you're a moron.
So to find your purpose, you can ask questions like this. What potential do I have? What was I created to do? How am I different than everything else?
And there's the sneaky, tricksy bullshit. Instead of establishing that you were created at all, you of course assume that's a given. But you can't do that and be intellectually honest enough to actually discover any kind of truth that you would claim to be looking for. If you start with dishonesty, how the hell do you expect to end up with honesty? Anyway, to finish up, let's answer the questions, shall we? 1. The potential that I have is to drink all the whiskey. 2. I wasn't created. I emerged out of a big pile of whiskey. And the way that I am different from everything else? What the hell makes you think that I am so much different than everything else? Just because you think that you are incredibly special doesn't make it true. It only makes you kind of narcissistic and more than a little bit pathetic. Bye!